Good morning. Thank you all for joining our webinar today. Welcome to our webinar on PoSH for the blue-collar workforce, exploring challenges and solutions. The blue-collar workforce in India and probably globally as well has always been neglected, especially when it concerns the women workforce and especially in the area of prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace. Today, we will actually start our session with I'll give you an overview of the story of Jayashree Kathirvel before we move on to the actual discussion with our expert panel. So Jayashree Kathirvel's story is a very, very tragic one. She was a young lady of 20 years old. She joined the Nachi apparel factory in Tamil Nadu, a big supplier of clothes to H&M in 2018. She worked demanding shifts to fund her own education as well as support her large family. By all accounts, she was a diligent employee who often raised concerns about a product's quality. This caused a humiliating situation for her supervisor, Tangadurai, on many occasions. She repeatedly brought up constant sexual harassment at the workplace by Tangadurai, her manager. These went unheeded, unfortunately. And very, very tragically, her dead body, Jayashree's dead body, was found in January 2021, more than a year ago. She's believed to have been raped before being murdered. Her supervisor, Tangadurai, subsequently has confessed to the murder as well. The family and the local union representing women workers at Nachi Apparels claim that Jayashree has been attempting to report the harassment and intimidation that she was suffering at work, but no action taken. Several other women workers at Nachi Apparels have testified that Jayashree was sexually harassed multiple times by Tangadurai, her supervisor. They've also stated that this very same supervisor had a history of sexually harassing women, and that he's not the only supervisor or manager who has indulged in these actions at that particular factory. These are all very, very unfortunate series of events that have occurred. 9 years after Government of India passed the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace law in 2013, many of our women continue to suffer. How many more of our women workforce have to suffer before they get justice? Could Jayashree's life have been saved if the organization had proper systems and policies in place? To debate some of these issues around protection for a blue-collar workforce, we have an esteemed panel in place that I'd like to introduce to all of you. To begin with, I'd like to introduce Mr. Vimal Sota. Vimal is Executive Director at Everstone Capital Advisors. He has over 2 decades of experience and leads and manages corporate compliance and governance for Everstone Capital Advisors and its verticals, including Eversource, EverYonder, and InnoSpace. He has been a critical part of Everstone's legal team, which was recognized as one of the leading Indian in-house corporate legal teams by the prestigious Legal 500 and was featured in the GC Power List India teams for 2017. Vimal, welcome on board. Delighted to have you join our panel today. Our next panelist is Bela Chawla. Bela is an associate director with Indigo, working in the ethics and compliance team of the governance, risk, and compliance function. Bela has over 18 years of experience in the area of employee-centric projects across aviation and client servicing customer care industries. She's currently associated with Indigo, India's largest airline, leading their ethics and compliance awareness programs, along with prevention of sexual harassment at workplace initiatives. Bela is a trained IC member with expertise in carrying out various aspects of managing complaints of sexual harassment at the workplace, including investigations, training and awareness programs, and of course, the annual reporting to regulatory authorities. Bela, welcome aboard. Really delighted to have you join today's session and be part of our panel. Thank you very much for making time for this session. Our last speaker, not the least, but is Rivya Singh. She is subject matter expert in the area of PoSH. Rivia is currently the managing partner at Oris Law Partners and specializes in issues relating to anti-harassment and ethical business practices. She also has considerable expertise in technology and privacy law, anti-corruption laws, and corporate commercial contracts. In addition to the above, and probably most relevant for our discussion today, Rivia has been working as an external member of internal committees of various organizations and trains and conducts interventions and workshops for both employees as well as for members of the IC. Rivia, terrific to have you on board. Thank you so much for making time to be a panelist for our session today. And once again, a warm welcome to all our panelists and welcome to all those of you who have logged in, joined in to participate and listen in on our webinar on PoSH for the blue collar workforce, exploring challenges and solutions. Before we kick off the webinar, just sort of wanted to put a couple of points out there for all of you who are sort of listening in. Feel free to drop your questions for any of the panelists or all of the panelists anytime during the session. We'll pick up the questions towards the end of the session and sort of respond to as many as we can during the course, once we have completed the webinar or once the questions have all been debated and discussed. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. Okay, so we can actually get going with our panel discussion that we have in place today. So panelists, our first question is really focused on, does applying PoSH awareness and compliance need a dedicated push for our blue collar workers? I think just to kind of elaborate a little bit, really, in the 8 or 9 years that we've had the PoSH law, clearly there has been a dedicated push by corporates to train and sensitize the workforces, in corporate India, amongst the white collar workforce in particular. And of course, I think it would be fair to say that we have had a fair bit of success, although a lot more needs to be done. But we've had a fair bit of success in terms of sensitizing the workforce and also putting in place greater protections for the workforce, especially the women workforce. The question really is, are we doing enough for our blue collar workers? Those who work in factories, those who are sort of, the term in vogue today is gig workers. Are they sufficiently protected? And bearing in mind that sometimes many of these factories are located in very far-flung areas, rural India, the hinterlands, where job opportunities are very, very few, and where the supervisor has or people in power have a lot of sort of authority that they often tend to misuse. So coming back to the main question, I'm rambling on, but coming back to the main question, does PoSH awareness and compliance need a dedicated push for our blue collar workers? And love to bring our panelists in. Let's start with Vimal. Vimal, in your experience across the many years as a professional, what's your view? Do you believe that we need to do more for this segment of our workforce?
First of all, thank you, Rainmaker, for the opportunity, and thank you to the participants for joining us on this session. Let me begin with a survey which was taken on garment workers. I'm referring to this specific survey because typically in a garment industry, 60 to 90% of the workforce is women employees, female employees. What were the findings of this survey? Abuse and sexual harassment is routine, widespread. Women routinely get unwelcome sexual attention. 60% of the victims were disbelieved or they were blamed whenever they raised a complaint. 75% said that there was no functional complaint mechanism. 95% felt that senior management does not punish the supervisors or managers who actually harass the women. So it's a serious issue. Now, according to World Bank estimate, female labor force participation in India is around 19%. Now, if the goal for India is to become a developed country in the next 25 years, we need more women to join the workforce. That cannot happen if your workplace isn't safe, isn't free of discrimination, has harassment, or if there are avenues not available to redress complaints. a sense of security at workplace will improve women's participation, improve productivity, and would result in economic empowerment. I think better late than never, a dedicated approach is very much required in this.
Vimal, very startling statistics, but not surprising at all. I think many of us who work in this area know how true these stats are. And I think definitely what you shared is the garment workers, which make up a big part of our workforce in India, are definitely the ones who are struggling, suffering, which leads to a situation where most of them don't bother to even make a complaint because they realize that filing a complaint might end up resulting in either a job loss or further sort of tragedies like what has happened to Jayashree Kathirvel. So absolutely spot on. Great stats. Bela, is this something that as a legal compliance ethics professional that you've seen over the years? Is this something that holds true in your mind, and what can we do about it?
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining in. And I totally, echo what Vimal just said. So it's the whole act came in play to be able to, revolutionize and bring in equality in the society and bring in the progressiveness in the society. Somewhere we failed because the penetration, what I feel, to these blue-collared employees or workers is not as much as probably in a white-collared employees has been done for various reasons. And first and foremost is about the training or the awareness itself. We're talking about class of people where literacy is a concern, right? That itself is a challenge, and that's why we've not been able to penetrate so well. These are the most susceptible kind of class of people for who this act might have been, there to make a difference to their lives. Whereas somewhere they don't even have a complete knowledge of their law or rights. That's something that they can utilize to their benefit. So I think, of course, there's a lot to be done for awareness, and of course, a dedicated push when we say it needs to be channelized very well to be able to, again, create that balance, and that we don't think PoSH is relevant only to, let's say, organizations or people who are working in MNCs and things like those. It's definitely required everywhere, right? All of these workplaces as well.
Very true, Bill. I think there is possibly a sense that many of us in the urban parts of India do not really see that the impact of sexual harassment at workplaces in factories, and therefore maybe we haven't really given it that much thought. And even Jayashree Kathirvel's case, for example, is a case in point, right? How many of us know about her case? How many of us know what has happened to her? Very few. And one of the objectives that we want this webinar to bring out is also the fact that create awareness that there is a serious problem brewing, and it is yet to be sort of addressed, and it needs to be addressed on an urgent war footing. So very, very valid points. And I think particularly the one you raised about illiteracy, I think that holds very, very true. I think many of the workers are not fully aware of their rights and are not able to do enough about it. So all fair points. Rivya, legal expert, you're a lawyer, you sit on multiple ICs. What's been your experience? I mean, white collar versus blue collar, do we need to do more? Can you share some of your experiences as a member of multiple ICs and what you've seen, and how this has come about?
Yes, absolutely, Antony. And firstly, thank you so much for having me on this panel and for this discussion. And this is a very, very important topic that we are discussing today. And as you rightly said, absolutely, we need a dedicated push for for getting for blue collared workers, because I'll start with a story. There was once I was conducting a training for some blue-collared workers. And this was the first in that particular organization with respect to the blue-collared workers. They had never attended a training before. And this was just 3 years ago that I was conducting this training. And, you know, after the training, this one woman, she comes up to me and she said, मुझे पता नहीं था कि बदतमीजी के लिए भी मैं कहीं जा सकती हूँ. Right? So they always thought that, you know, I can go to police and file a complaint if, you know, if somebody rapes or something, but they didn't know that for eve teasing or for, you know, any kind of these obscene messages that they're getting or any kind of unwanted advances that they are getting, they could have gone to a committee. And this was the first time, you know, 3 years ago that they got to know that there is an internal committee, there is a mechanism through which they can file a complaint, right? So, you know, as Bela and as Vimal rightly said, you know, the literacy part becomes really important. Several organizations have policies, but the question is, how many policies are written in regional languages, right? Your policy is there, it's up there on the website or on your intranet, but these are all in English, right? You can't expect, you know, a blue-collared worker to, firstly, they don't even have laptops, or they don't even get any kind of, you know, technical support from the organization that way. And then to expect them to understand what that policy is, absolutely, it would be something that they wouldn't even know about, firstly. And secondly, even if they know about, they wouldn't be able to read it, right? So yes, it needs a dedicated push. People end up, corporates end up neglecting, or I would just say forgetting, not neglecting, but forgetting about the fact that, you know, there are blue-collared workers as well who are working in the organizations, and that they need to be trained as well. They need to be told about what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, and also told about the existence of these committees that they can go and file a complaint with.
Terrific points, Rive. In fact, I think one point that that both Bela and you made, which kind of stayed with me, is literacy. And as I thought about it, I realized that literacy is not just learning how to read or write. Actually, it extends to knowing what your rights are. And unfortunately, that aspect of the literacy is often not considered. And as you rightly said, I think there definitely is a lot more that needs to be done from a training, awareness, sensitization perspective. I thought that story that you narrated was a particularly sort of, it resonated with me, right? Because women at some of these places don't even realize that they have a recourse against some of this kind of behavior that they're putting up with on a daily basis, because they are, you know, they don't really have a choice. They're forced to. And it's a question of food, bread and butter, right? So it is natural that they're not, in most cases, going to do anything about it. Or so all very, very relevant points. And I think the one that you made about policies being made in regional languages, and maybe also extending to training being conducted in regional languages so that the workforce understands what their rights are. I think that's very important. Putting up the policy in a regional language, putting it up in a prominent place in the factory, and constantly reinforcing or conducting workshops or conducting online trainings for these folks to ensure that they understand, yes, I have a right, and even this is a form of sexual harassment, and I have a recourse. And I think most importantly, having a sort of proper internal committee in place, one that commands respect and is trusted by the employees. All of those are very, very important. Okay, so thank you all. Moving on to our next question. What are the barriers that we face? And I know this question is somewhat linked to the first question that we just addressed, but what are the barriers that we face to sort of bringing about greater awareness and implementing the prevention of sexual harassment law in some of these places? Just, you know, in your experience, maybe we can just have a couple of points that you can that come to the top of your mind. What are the barriers that are faced by you know, by women, or barriers that are faced in implementing this law, more importantly? So Vimal, again, your views on this.
Yeah, so let me present you a scenario. A woman working in a hospitality sector calls up the IC. She mentions about sexual harassment. She says there is a witness, but she does not want her name. She does not want her complaint to be given in writing. She is afraid of retaliation. She is afraid of being a talking point on the shop floor. She's afraid that she could be tagged as a troublemaker. And if the word reaches her house, she may not be allowed to go out and work. She requires complete anonymity and she wants to IC to act on it. The practical difficulty is the law requires the complaint to be in writing. The law requires the principle of natural justice to be followed. How would IC handle this scenario? Then, apart from PoSH and the policy, a typical industrial undertaking also have to follow the industrial standing orders. So you come to multiple mechanisms and multiple forums to address the complaints. Third, in the factory scenario, you would have trade unions who may want a say in the proceedings. Then there would be power play, ego clashes, so on and so forth. So in my point of view, there is a need to think out of the box for blue collar workforce. You need to marry the PoSH Act and the industrial standing orders. The workplace should strike a balance, have clear documented service rules. If the trade union wants to be on the IC, sit down with the trade union members, formulate how the mechanism would work, sensitize the union. Gender sensitization. For example, take down things which is acceptable, not acceptable, foul language, not acceptable on the floor. Create awareness on how one should behave. Build support systems, have continuous engagement with the workforce. Lastly, evaluate whatever systems are there, whether they are working, get feedbacks, conduct pulse surveys, assess gaps, and undertake corrective actions.
Vimal, those are all terrific points. In fact, when you mentioned the multiple forums that that a complainant has to possibly access in the factory, in a factory setting, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, we never think about the practical barriers that an individual or an aggrieved woman would face when taking a complaint up. Likewise, you know, the aspect of trade unions. Again, I think that is something that many of us white collar workers don't ever think of, right? Because for us, it's almost like the PoSH law was drafted for the white collar workforce, right? It in many ways it actually reflects a modern urban scenario where you know, there is anonymity. You go, the IC hears the case in a conference room or somewhere outside office where there is anonymity. There are no multiple forums. You get your order and either you're happy with it or not, if you can file an appeal. So the process is all fairly straightforward, but you take it to a factory setting and suddenly you realize that there are so many issues that need to be dealt with. So you've raised some excellent points, Vimal. Thank you. Definitely some food for thought for, you know, our the governments as they frame. Maybe it's time to actually tweak the PoSH law to also make it more relevant from a factory setting. So all terrific points. Bela, want to quickly bring you in here. Do you know a lot of what Vimal said with respect to the barriers? Do you agree with them? And do you have, you know, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I totally resonate with what he's just mentioned about these barriers. And not to forget, you know, it all begins with the fear of losing their job, right? Because it's always a barrier in their mind that they think about. I'm bringing up this point. It's as it is that they're second guessing themselves. Is this even true, right? If I'm going to be complaining, would people not talk about me? You know, and it's a big barrier about the background that they come from. So these are, you know, the kind of people we are talking about who are making it difficult, as in trying to balance their work life and their home. They've been out from their house to be able to work. That itself is a biggest challenge for them. And now facing challenges at workplace with respect to a sexual harassment. And if they complain about it, that information reaching back to their house, how would that be perceived? How would people around them perceive these people? You know, and like I said, it's so difficult for them to be able to get this job. And now once they have, they want to cling on to it, right? And they just feel that, okay, this might just pass on. This is just a passing phase. Let me go on. Let me put up with it, because eventually this is a supervisor. You know, it could be in that kind of a situation. And they just want to take it ahead because they do not want to make a complaint about it. and tell the world that, they are suffering. It could lead into various forums, and they don't want to face that, right? Let's understand all of this vis-a-vis to a white-collared employee. Again, it boils down to the information, to the awareness. Since they are aware about their act, since they are aware about their rights, they'll be head on with something that happens to them at workplace vis-a-vis a blue-collar employee, right? And all of this, let's not forget, it's a taboo that's treated, right? Because once they go back home and people around them, their relatives and everybody talking about it, will lead into another discussion, which they would want to avoid. So I feel that's a biggest barrier that we can see in the blue-collar employees. And again, once again, it has to be with the awareness drive, and during this awareness is what should be informed to them, not just about the rights, but how they should perceive these sexual advances as. Because many times they feel this is okay to do. And sometimes I feel all of this is coming out from our Bollywood culture, because you get to see these movies and, there is a hero, there is a villain. So it's all right for a hero to, tag along with a heroine and kind of follow that person. And that's treated to be okay. So we never know when this culture creeps into the workplace and people are not able to distinguish, at least this blue-collared employee workers, to be able to distinguish that very clearly. Yeah.
Bela, terrific point. In fact, the Bollywood one particularly resonated with me because I think we have all seen movies which glorify stalking.
Right.
And of course, ultimately the hero wins the heroine in the end. So therefore, it's all okay, right? I mean, I think that has seeped into our mindsets and our DNA so much over the years that we are unable to kind of, many of us are unable to actually distinguish between what is appropriate behavior and what is not, because it is probably seen as a way to, sort of be a man, go out there, patav the girl as you were, and etc. So totally, well, it resonates very well with me. And I think the fear of job loss, the fear of shaming, these are all things that, particularly for me, as a man, I realized how privileged I am just to be able to go to work and not worry about these things, right? And that's how you are able to give it your best. Now, if you're at the workplace and you're also worried about handling a sexual predator, while at the same time figuring out how to get your work done, and at the same time worrying about what your family back home will say, will they ask you to stop working, and all of those things. So really, these are mountains that some of the women in our workforce need to climb in order to just be able to do what most of us do on a daily basis and take for granted. So anyway, thank you for that. Rivya, just sort of want to bring you in on the barriers from a legal perspective. Do you believe that the law needs to change? Do you believe that we need to add or modify or tweak the laws, or maybe the rules can be more clarificatory in nature? I think Vimal raised some very good points about multiple forums or that potentially get involved. So in your experience, do you think that needs to be done, or is it just simply a matter of enforcing the law and everything else will fall in place?
So Antony, brilliant points. Firstly, that that Bimal and Bela, put forth, and they are all so well. Because when I am as an external member, when I see these complaints, trust me, all of these things are something that comes forth. Right. And, of course, the law, is there. The law just got passed in 2013, right, which is absolutely on the basis of Vishaka guidelines. Right. So I'm hoping that, there will be certain amendments, and they should come up with some amendments, especially with respect to unorganized sectors, or with respect to, with respect to blue-collared workers. Absolutely. Now, while, we have to follow principles of natural justice. So, confidentiality is something that we can't give to the complainant, because, the accused also needs to provide his side of the story with respect to that particular incident. However, what is very required, and what is required is that, people are told that this is confidential, and that nobody outside of the IC will get to know about it, right? And ensuring that we are protecting that particular confidentiality so that no one knows. And as Vimal rightly pointed out, that if people come to know, and I think Dela also said that if people come, if my relative will come to know, or if my family comes to know that I will, that I've been sexually harassed at my organization, the first thing that they will do is ask me to stop work. And this is something which not only comes out in blue-collared, complaints. I have seen this in white-collared complaints as well. I have seen this all across industries, right? It's not only with respect to certain people, that fear of loss, that tag of being called a troublemaker, that embarrassment, right? And then to also, bring forth the complaint, right? Because you're see a lot of people who are facing sexual harassment, be it whoever, whether in white collar or in blue collar workplaces, or however they are, whoever they are, it's very difficult to talk about it. It's very difficult to narrate what one is going through, right? And a lot of people don't even talk to their friends about it. Now imagine talking to people who are internal committee members, who you don't even know, right? And especially in cases of blue-collared workers, what I have seen is that your internal committee, which is constituted by the organization, is at the corporate level. And these workers have no idea who these people are, right? They probably are not even present in that particular factory. If that factory is in, let's say, Hinjawadi, or let's say, so not Hinjawadi, let's say in, somewhere ahead of Bhiwandi, for example, the IC will be sitting somewhere in Bombay, right? And they will have no idea who those IC members are. And now talking about what is happening to them becomes very difficult to the strangers, right? And also the fact that, if the perpetrator is somebody who's very senior, I'm going to lose my job, because the senior is the one who will continue to stay, and I'm not really needed, and I'm indispensable, right? So I think what is very important, and the law has mandated that. The law requires every organization to have an IC in every workplace. So ideally, that factory should have the internal committee in place, right? Which a lot of organizations, for ease, and also see, it's not very easy to find people who you believe could actually do justice to the role of internal committee as well, right? So of course there are barriers with respect to that, but I would suggest that you have external members. So even if you don't have enough people in that particular region, you still have an external member who could and who has the ability to drive to drive these kind of cases and to put forth the real issues, right? So I believe that organizations should have internal committee in the factory as well. At least one person in that factory should be a part of the internal committee, who people would have faith in, who people would have confidence in, who people can reach out to if they are being sexually harassed, rather than having one IC in the corporate in the head office, who these people have no idea about. What I would also suggest is that, and what I have seen as another barrier is that a lot of corporate, offices, they end up saying that, we don't want to do trainings for, so firstly, they say we do, some say that we don't want to do trainings at all, because if we do training and we have an IC, then, there will be more complaints. And then that's absolutely hilarious, because it's like, saying that, I don't want to have police stations because there'll be a lot of complaints filed, right? So that, and with respect to blue collared workers, a lot of, corporates do end up saying that, if we extend this, or if we extend the training to blue collared workers, they will end up making more complaints, right? But the idea is to have the internal committee and to do training so that they know where to approach and who to go to. Nobody, if the complaints would be coming in such huge numbers, we would have required dedicated ICs only to look into cases of sexual harassment, right? So absolutely, I think one IC member should at least be there, if not everyone from that particular factory. Explaining to people that it is confidential and that nobody will come to know, which is what we do for white collared as well, right? We tell them that nobody in your family will come to know. It's only going to be amongst ourselves, and you can and there will be no retaliation. If there's any retaliation come to us, we will, and we can take interim reliefs. We can give interim reliefs to people. We end up changing the office location for people, transferring them to different branch offices, so that retaliation does not happen. So those kind of facilities, if that's provided, a lot of, I think that is good.
Thank you, Rivya. all very, very good points. And I think the point about localized IC is a very valid one, because if you have IC members who are in the corporate office, obviously there's no connection with the people. There's no connection. They are not going to know if they will even take their case seriously. So one is that. I feel that the other problem that needs to be addressed is to have more senior women at the factory level, because what's happening is a lot of the sexual harassment complaints are actually an abuse of power by probably the senior most person or somebody very, very high up, right? Supervisors and maybe even at a higher level than that. So of course, this is more of a long-term strategy, but I think definitely factories need to also work towards having more senior women at higher places, so that that itself will bring about a sense of confidence, because otherwise there is also a sense that it's like a boys club, right? I mean, even if I complain about my supervisor, ultimately the person on top may or may not take it seriously. So all very, very valid points. So I think maybe to sum up, largely, Rivya, you feel that the implementing the existing law or putting more force into it is really what we need to do. Of course, there can always be tweaks to the current law that are welcome, but I think if we execute and implement the current law, that itself should take us a significant few steps forward. So our third question, panelists, is really, what are the kind of or forms of sexual harassment amongst blue collar workers, and is it different than what white collar workers face? I mean, can we just say, sexual harassment, well, it's all the same. I mean, everybody faces it and that's really what it's about. Or do you see a difference in the kind of harassment that is faced by those who work in a white collar setup or, those who work in sort of a factory? Just would like your thoughts on that. And maybe this time, Bela, we could start with getting your views and your thoughts on this.
Sure. Thanks, Antony. So yes, the kind of the ways of sexual harassment at white collared or blue collared, it's just no different. Both, where we can see the quid pro quo as well as the in-person sexual harassment being done at widespread. Sorry. So it's no different. Just because we have different kind of workers doesn't mean the sexual harassment forms differs. In fact, at a blue collared level, where you see the in-person sexual harassment, where again, you have the workforce who is come to the workplace, again, with that thought of, this is the only workplace that I can go to. The places that we're talking about are remote areas where you might just have few places where this person can go about working, and, is first of all, as it is, like I mentioned before in my discussion, is a struggle for them to be able to get out of their house to earn. That thought itself is a big mindset change, not for themselves, but even for their family members, right? And now when they get this job, they want to hold on to it. So when they can kind of undergo the sexual harassment kind of nature from their supervisors or let's say colleagues as well, they are second guessing themselves. They do not want to go about complaining. And again, if they complain, they know people are going to be judging them more than the perpetrator. They're going to be judged by the other people around them. And then while they play the victim, they know that the supervisor has her hands on them, because eventually he's the one who controls their job, or even for that matter, he's the person who's controlling their payment, which might not happen in time, and things like those that will run into a problem for them. So that's where they would want to sit quiet, right? And even in a quid pro quo situation, they very well know if at all they do not give in to what their perpetrator is asking for, they will be the ones who will further fall as a victim. right? And they know apart from this workplace, that's another element. Apart from this workplace, outside the workplace is where they could be challenged as well. So that's where they would want to give in, right? They would not want to go about challenging or go about seeking help from somebody, but they would give in because they understand that this is the only place that they've come to work. Outside this, they have no, again, they don't know the redressal method. They do not know, again, if they think about filing a police complaint, they're not sure how it will be taken in outside the workplace. How will they be perceived by the others? So all of that kind of leads into a trouble for them, right? And I think it's all sorts of, so we can't really distinguish if we have a different kind of sexual harassment created in a sort of blue collar employee workforce area or separate for a white collared employees. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think it's clear that sexual harassment is sexual harassment, and there is no real distinction between, you know, the sexual harassment faced by the white collar workforce and blue collar workforce. Quid pro quo, hostile work environments, they all continue irrespective of who's at the receiving end. Fair point, Bela. Rivya, in your experience as an IC member, what's, you know, you sort of sat on both, you know, corporate, you know, ICs as well as ICs that are for factories. Do you see a difference? Have you seen in your experience that one type tends to be different from the other, or like Bela says, it's all pretty much the same?
As Bela has said, you know, the kind of sexual harassment that we see, whether with white collar workers or with blue collar workers, is mostly the same, right? There's no real difference, right? Sometimes also, you know, in blue collar workers, there's also a little, you know, what I have seen in some cases is also caste related or, you know, culture related sort of sexual harassment as well, right? So which may not necessarily be there in the white collared workers or people at least who are in more metropolitan cities, but in rural areas, caste also plays you know, a very important you know, role in these kind of sexual harassment as well. So that is what we have seen as well. But essentially it's the same, right? And you know, when it comes to women who have filed complaints of sexual harassment, whether in white collar or blue collar, I've always seen them, you know, self-blaming as well, right? Because of the conditioning which has happened in the society, they end up believing that they are the reasons. And, you know, the first half of, you know, our IC meeting only gets spent in letting them know that they are not the one who's responsible, right? Because they always tend to say, maybe I must have done something. Maybe I was wearing something like this because of which it has happened. There was one training that I did for a blue-collared setup where one person ended up saying, but, you know, if girls end up wearing clothes like that, then of course, you know, something like this can happen. But again, you know, and that's the reason why a lot of times during the training, we end up telling them it's not with respect to the clothes that a person is wearing. It's always, the blame is always on the perpetrator who's done the act and not the victim who's at the receiving end, you know. So, and who decides what is, you know, what are obscene clothes and what are nice clothes? I mean, it's very subjective, right? A sleeveless could be considered to be obscene by some and could be considered to be absolutely okay with some. But again, you know, I think with regular training of people and, you know, breaking that conditioning is something which is very important. But the kinds of sexual harassment, to your question, are the same everywhere, and it's not different from one to the other.
Fair point, Rivya. Fair point. Looks like we have a consensus on that issue in so far as it as Bela and you sort of agree on this. Vimal, you've been quiet, and of course, primarily because you're the last to speak on this point. But what are your thoughts in terms of, you know, do you see a difference in your experience?
So, Antony, so a lot of things that we take for granted in an office setup is not present in a factory. Blue collar workforce is unlikely to have the best of working conditions. Many a times they are paid minimum, below the minimum wages. The common complaint is wages are withheld until some target is met. Maternity leaves are not easily granted. You will find a scenario where a woman employee is dismissed instead of granting a maternity leave. As pointed out by panelists, lack of employment opportunities in the local area. So while the setup is different, as pointed out by Bela and Rivia, the forms of sexual harassment would still fall in the broad bucket of quid pro quo and hostile work environment. There is no change.
Terrific. So I think we all agree. I guess the couple of variables that might come in a blue collar workforce, as you've all identified, one potentially could be caste, because in a lot of these interior hinterland India, that is also a powerful motivator by those abusing power. And of course, therefore, the other, which is more from the perspective of the victim, which is really whether she can, whether she wants to come up and sort of take steps, take action, and therefore that silence, does it actually lead to greater use of power or force by the perpetrator to actually crush any potential voice that may be there. So you might see that at a greater level or a greater degree in the blue collar workforce. But the nature of sexual harassment, obviously, as you've all rightly identified, pretty much doesn't change. Quid pro quo and a hostile work environment, and the fact that sexual harassment mostly is about an abuse of power. Okay, wonderful. So thank you all for your points. We are moving now to the sort of last end segment of our panel discussion. And the last question is really in two parts. Who is really responsible for preventing sexual harassment at the workplace and providing redressal? In the sense of, and I want to clarify that question through the second part, which is really, what is the responsibility of the organization, management of the organization? What should they be doing vis-a-vis the appropriate governments or governments in that particular state government or district government or, what have you, union government? Who should be doing what? I think that's really, we want to end this in this panel discussion on a note where we try and identify what should be done by each of the respective stakeholders in this. So Rivia, we could sort of start this last segment with you. In your view or in your thoughts, particularly if you want to take the approach from a statutory or legal perspective, who really should be doing what? Where does the responsibility sit?
So Antony, it's a very good question, because what we have seen is, as a country we have really good laws, but the enforcement of the law is something which is questionable, right? The implementation doesn't happen that well, right? So what the government should do, I believe that as a government, they have a law which has firstly more severe penalties. Right, we have 50,000 rupees as penalty for the first offence for non-compliance with the PoSH Act, and only for the second offence it will be double the penalty or cancellation of business license. So the penalties aren't much. In 2018, of course, there was a change in the companies law, but it only sort of relates to company law, where if you do not have the IC in place, then it could be 25 lakhs or imprisonment and all of that. But what happens to LLPs? What happens to firms? What happens to sole proprietors? There is nothing. There is no, there's no higher punishment or severe penalties that I can see. Secondly, there are, of course, under PoSH law, we have to comply with annual reports. We have to provide annual reports to the district officers. And of course, non-compliance of the law again leads to 50,000 rupees as penalty. But I know for a fact so many organizations who do not submit these annual reports, and I have not seen any kind of action taken against them. Right? So when you see that there is no action being taken, when you see that there is really lack of enforcement, then people end up not complying with the law, because a lot of times you comply with the law only when there are severe penalties, and when you see that people are paying penalties. When you see that nobody is paying penalty, you may not even end up complying with the law. So more stringent and implementation is required of this law. Thirdly, what I also believe is, and especially when when we're talking about blue-collar workers, while the organization is required to train and all of that, I think it's very important for government also to do these drives. The way we see that polio drives are happening and the other drives happen where people put up posters, where the government put up posters and say that, please go for, take your children for polio drops. We need to have some kind of drives for this as well, so that at least the government is letting people know that there should be an IC in your workplace and that they can file a complaint in case of sexual harassment. And if these people, they see that they do not have an IC, they can at least raise that question. So that kind of awareness, I think, should be made by the government. Of course, government is also doing, I know Telangana government or even, in Noida, they all have come up with the websites to put forth the annual reports and all of that. But I think a lot needs to be done from the government end to ensure that the organizations are complying with the law, not only in letter, but also in spirit, because otherwise, so that's one. What the organization should do, is that also a question, Antony?
The question really is, who should be doing what, right? Should the government be doing something, which I think you've answered right now? In your view, is there any accountability with the organization? If so, what?
Yes, absolutely. And the organizations should know that one is law, of course, compliance with the law. And second is also your own reputation and your own organization, right? You want to have an organization which is safe, right? Of course, the law requires that the organization should provide safe workplace for women. It is for the organization to ensure that they are providing safe workplace for women. They are doing continuous trainings. They are letting the employees know that these kind of situations could lead to penalties by the organization. People may end up also getting terminated from the organization. And then what we say that justice should not only be done, but should be seen to be done, right? When the organization, of course, these matters are confidential, but if people end up knowing, people will know that, okay, I've seen my organization doing this, right? I've seen my organization complying with the law. I've seen my organization not keeping silent when somebody is displaying inappropriate behavior. I've seen my managers stopping other people who are behaving inappropriately. So these kind of of course, complying with the law and also doing these additional activities also is something that I think organizations must do to sort of ensure that the employees also have confidence in the organization and trust in the organization as well.
Solid points, Rivia. And I think you've raised some very interesting points with respect to what the government needs to do. I think penalties need to be more severe. No action for non-compliance. I think the fact that the government needs to do more auditing or more checking to ensure that organizations are in compliance. It's not just enough to take the annual reports and take it as the absolute truth. There does need to be more sort of drilling down in by the respective governments. And I particularly like the suggestion about awareness drives, like akin to polio drives. I think having brand ambassadors talk about it on media, the way I think Amitabh Bachchan did for polio, having the government itself kind of making it a mission and talking about it and really taking it from house to house not maybe in a literal way, but with the use of digital technology. I think we can literally get this message into every house, every village, every town, every state, and practically cover the whole country. So from the governmental perspective, yes, that makes sense. And of course, from a corporate perspective, I think I fully endorse it. I think the reputation of an organization takes a huge beating if they're not in compliance with the PoSH law. And that is one reason, if nothing else, I think it's one reason that organizations need to sort of take the law more seriously. Forget compliance and all of those risks that come with it, but just if nothing else, for the safety and of your own organization, the brand that you've worked hard to create, I think you need to take compliance very seriously. So thank you for that. Vimal, sort of to quickly bring you in here, the points Rivia raised, and do you want to sort of add to that? Really the question is, what more needs to be done, and who needs to do what, the governments versus the corporate sort of corporate India. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, let me break my answers into two. We begin with a scenario. A housekeeping woman employee complains against a security officer. The housekeeping woman is outsourced, contract employee. The security personnel is an employee of a vendor, but they both are on your premises. The 2013 Act puts the onus on the employer. It is the duty of the employer to prevent and provide for redressal. Now, with multiple contract employees, on-roll employees, off-roll employees, vendor employees in a premises, the question is which IC should come into play? Which employer's duty is to redress and to take it forward? My idea is, whenever such incidents happens, emotions are running high. There is pressure to take action. Trying to find an IC or to pin responsibility at that point of time may not be the best way to handle the scenario. It's a very sensitive matter which has to be responded in a timely manner. My view is the principal employer, which is the main organization, has an important role to play. The incident happened at its premises. It's, as you pointed out, it's the reputation of the principal employer which is at stake. The principal employer generally is in a position to influence the vendors and the contract employees. So one way to deal with this is be prepared well in advance, discuss the scenarios with your service providers, and document which IC and the role of each of the third-party organizations who are at your premises. That is point one. Second is, as Rivia pointed out, there is a provision to file an annual report. Section 25 empowers the government officers to visit the premises. Section 26 prescribes penalties for non-compliance. So the government already has adequate power. I think the need is to monitor compliance and have an effective statutory oversight. Reports are filed. Is somebody reviewing the report? Whether actual trainings are being done, whether IC is done. For entities who are not filing the report, visit the premises, get clarifications. A survey was conducted by FICCI and EY, whereby 35% of the participants were not even aware that there is a penalty for non-compliance, or their licenses can be cancelled if there is a repeat non-compliance. So the need is to create awareness. As Rivia said, more focus on awareness, more focus on building trust. With that redressal mechanism is there. The tone should be set from the top, sensitize employees, build support system, build trust, show empathy.
Vimal, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Now I won't take much to sum it up.
Please go ahead.
To sum it up, industry should be not adapting to the law, but adopting the law. Adapting is when you make changes to suit your requirements, whereas adopting is accepting things wholeheartedly. So not just adapt the policies, the codes, but also adopt it.
Terrific words to kind of leave everybody with at the end of the webinar. Adopt the law. Don't that's really what you need to do. And I also want to say this, Vimal, you are our statistics man for the day today. You've thrown so much interesting stats out there. I had no idea about this. 35% of FICCI participants didn't even know that there were penal consequences. Now that just shows that it's not just blue collar, even at the white collar level, we still have a lot, all of us have a lot more work to do in terms of creating awareness. So very, very eye-opening stats that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much. So our last panelist who will speak on this, Bela, want to bring you in. You have a chance to kind of sum up and round off our debate today. So what are your thoughts?
Sure. So in fact, I really go with the thought that Vimal just suggested. It's about the top-down approach. That's what we all are looking forward to. While there's an act, the government has been doing its bit. I understand we can improvise that. We can put that to the next level. All of that can happen. In fact, since 2013 till now, as it is, government has taken various steps to improve and make kind of act coming in forward for not just the corporate world, but across, right? But what's required, whether in a blue collared or a white collared, I think it's about the top down approach. That's the mindset change, the culture change, this whole thing that we're talking about, the importance of PoSH, making people aware about it at workplaces, is a change, a cultural change in itself. So to bring that about, and when the top-down approach is there in each and every segment, that's where it's going to impact. That's where it's going to impact not just that organization, but it would be for the progression of the complete society, the country, in fact, right? So here, there are times, when we see the blue-collared employees or the contractual employees, there is this good debate of who's the right person to look into their matter, who's the responsible person to make these people aware about their rights, or awareness that needs to be created. It's very easy to blame the other employer. It's what we need to understand is, even when we have these contractual employees working in the work environment, what's more important is that particular employer, for that particular employer, it becomes imperative that they run with a great culture, because it's not going to impact their progression or their productivity. It's also going to about their about their employability, because there are other people looking at this employer. It's going to only help them improve the employee retention, protect the organization goodwill and reputation across. So all of these coming together, it has to be both government and corporate or organizations leading this whole thought. Only then we can make some impact or change. We can keep talking about it, we can keep discussing in various forums, but unless we all own it up, it will not make sense for the country. In fact, I remember this time in Prime Minister Modi, in his speech on the 15th August Independence Day celebration, he also spoke about how we should talk about the respect that needs to be given to women. So I feel somewhere it's now become another topic for the country to be able to set that at that level, and everybody to start working towards it, right? So it's all together, we've got to work towards it.
Oh, fair point, very fair point, Bela. In fact, I think if we can take that message delivered on 15th August by the PM and sort of use that to really do more on with respect to the PoSH Act implementation, particularly for blue collar, but at the same time, I think it's globally, I think we need to do more on the implementation. White collar, blue collar, ultimately sexual harassment is sexual harassment. Absolutely terrific takeaways. I've been furiously making notes as three of you were speaking. So thank you so much for sharing all those sort of nuggets of information, wisdom, etc. I think this is, hopefully we can use this to really make push forward for further change. I think we've come a fair way, but obviously long miles to go really before we can even pat ourselves on the back as a country in this space. So thank you. I think we have a few questions, so we'll try and take as many as we can, and we'll request the panelists to then share their inputs on each of those questions. So Satyajit is asking, how do we counter regressive beliefs with respect to clothing? I think, and his question is in the context of the Sessions Court in Kerala, or I think what happened to the professor at St. Xavier's in Kolkata. Any thoughts, panelists? Open to any of you or all of you to kind of respond to this. Okay, any of you can pick it up.
So let me try to attempt it. It's a cultural issue. Some leaders said that it's not the girls that you have to take care, it's the guys that you have to reprimand and discipline them. That's the way to go ahead. Addressing is a girl's personal choice. So the guys will have to take care of their hormones. They will have to be in control.
All right.
Very well said, Vimal. In fact, to add to that, basically what has happened is that because of conditioning, right, year-old, decades-old, maybe age-old conditioning, we end up shifting blame on the person who's at the receiving end, right? So we end up just the same way this Kerala High Court judge, he ended up, I think Sessions Court, he ended up saying something about the provocative dressing of the person. Now, my behavior should be my responsibility, right? It should not be controlled by somebody else's dressing. And let the person wear whatever they are wearing. I need to be responsible for my behavior, and I can't. That somebody is dressing some way doesn't mean that they are asking or they are wanting whatever you're doing, right? The idea for these things, what I always tell people whenever I'm conducting training is that it all depends on consent, right? Whether it's welcome or unwelcome, it's consent. And consent is always expressed. It's always an expressed yes. It's never implied. It doesn't mean that a person is wearing that kind of dress, so there is an implied consent to do whatever you want to do. Unless and until there is a want, unless and until there is an expressed yes to something, whatever behavior that we are exhibiting may be unwelcome for that person who's at the receiving end. And that is something that we must always sort of, remember.
Excellent points, Vimal and Rivya. So, okay, fair enough. We have another question on, are investors doing a PoSH diligence on investee companies? It's an interesting one. Is that as a part of the due diligence, is there a focus on whether that organization is actually in compliance with the PoSH law? Is that something that is happening today? Vimal, do you want to take a first stab at it and then maybe? Yeah.
Sure. So as PE investors, we develop and share global best practices with the portfolio companies. We engage with the portfolio companies, handle them, train them if necessary, and we try to raise the governance standard as a whole, create value. A specific ESG due diligence on which policies they have, if there are any gaps, identify those gaps, and make it a CP or a CS of your investment agreement is a very common feature in most of the good PE firms.
So there is, it's sort of becoming a practice now at PE firms to really do a detailed diligence. And one of the aspects is PoSH, not just on paper, whether they have policies, but also to dive a little deeper into see how it's working in practice, right? So
yes.
You're seeing that happening. Terrific. Okay. We have another question from Megha, we have a question from Megha rather, is how to protect employees from sexual harassment via social media, fake profiles being made, harassment via those fake profiles, harassment via personal social media accounts. How do people deal with it? Any advice, any suggestions that any of you, the panelists, have either for the aggrieved woman or even for the organization? How do you deal with these kind of, or ICs that see these kind of complaints?
Well, I think social media in today's date and age is quite a widespread, and to misuse or to create various profiles is something very easy and common. But I think an awareness again about, and in fact, there are people who are far more aware about how social media works these days, because they kind of themselves know whether this is going to be fake or not. As it is, it might not end up as a workplace, so to say. It might just fall out and could be like outside the workplace. But still, there's a due diligence and there's a social media policies, etc., for awareness sake for the employees that they are able to see. And of course, then we have the cybercrime cell who looks into such matters. So probably the PoSH might not be so relevant in such aspects, is what I feel.
Okay, fair point, Bela. Rivia, do you want to add to that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. As Bela said, cybercrime police, in the event somebody is making fake profiles and, sending inappropriate messages and all of that, absolutely cybercrime. If you know that this person is from your organization who's doing it, you can also go and file a complaint with the internal committee, and that is for the internal committee to then investigate and come to that conclusion.
Fair enough. Okay. So we have a flood of questions, but unfortunately we'll have to narrow it down to one or two more because we are kind of almost at the end of our session. I'm trying to see which of these would be interesting for the panelists to respond to. So there's one by Anandan. Anandan is asking, though confidentiality is there during PoSH inquiry, aggrieved women are concerned that any appeal in a higher forum, their identity is revealed, right? And therefore, thinking of that, many women might actually not make a complaint. Sometimes aggrieved women feel that an appeal being filed at the higher forum is sort of a way of retaliation to bring that person's name out in the public domain. Any thoughts on this? I mean, I know there have been a few cases, in fact, on this where I think some of the high courts have tried to blank out the names even at the appellate level, but I don't know. I mean, I'm going to throw it open there for all of you to kind of respond to. Any thoughts? How can we deal with this particular issue?
Should I go ahead?
Please.
Yes, so there was a decision of Bombay High Court where, this particular matter was, considered, and it was held that, the party's name should be blanked out and that the reports should not be reportable. But eventually they came out with, the clarification that it's not for every case, it's only for that particular case, that particular matter, that particular court was dealing with. So, you can always apply for, in-camera proceedings as well. You can ask the court to blank out the complainant's name, and that is, that is the facility which has been provided by the courts. And when I say in-camera, for people who are not lawyers, please know that in-camera does not mean recording, or in-camera does not mean in-camera per se. In-camera basically means, a confidential proceeding where your name will not be written in in the judgment or in the reportable format. So yeah, you can ask for in-camera proceedings, and mostly the judges should be able to accept that request. And that goes for even in rape cases and all of that, your victim's name can be
so if there is an appeal that is made by, let's say, the respondent in a case, and the matter is, let's say, before this higher court, let's say a high court, then it is the onus is on the complainant to actually make an application to the court to say, hey, listen, can you please keep these just proceedings in my particular case confidential, so that the confidentiality is maintained. So that is something that is one way to deal with it, right?
I think that application can be made. It's for the court then in that case to figure that out, whether they want to keep it or not keep it, but at least they can make that application. And mostly I think, they may end up succeeding. But again, time will tell.
Okay, fair enough. That's a fair point. Okay, we have a question from Gunjan, who's asking, if you could share suggestions on how to stop or reduce gossip at workplace linking people in a relationship, as gossip will usually not have evidence or witnesses. Any thoughts? And particularly from a sexual harassment perspective, maybe this kind of gossip actually amounts to sexual harassment, right? Particularly if it is, it puts the woman in a very vulnerable situation if the gossip is salacious or what have you. So, and it's also hard to trace back or track. So what do you all think about it? I mean, is there anything that you believe can be put in place to sort of deal with this?
Yeah, I think this is something very easy to do, again, through the awareness drives. And, when we talk about the awareness drives, it's not just about to talk about the policy per se or the act. It's about giving those examples which are scenario based. And if you have like a storyline to talk about, and that's where you bring in these elements, it's easy for employees to relate. and it's easy to send the message across also very subtly. While again, you're not naming, shaming people, but to bring out all of that during your awareness drive through various forums, through creating videos, messages, and circulating across through various channels. The social media, like I said, is very easy these days to be able to send across messages. And through those messaging, we can definitely talk about how, again, because again, employees might not per se see that as a sexual harassment related to a gossip at workplace. And that's again, once through this messaging it happens, it makes clear to the people that this is also something which can be reported or can be considered as a sexual harassment. That's when it clearly dies out. I think it's more important to tell them that this is a workplace and no more a college or a school or your personal area. But it's more to do about working professionally at all times.
Understood. So I think again boils down to continuous messaging, training, awareness, all of those things that really can change the mindset of people, and that ultimately is what will sort of lead to dealing with this particular issue. Okay, fair enough. I think there are still many questions left unanswered, and my apologies to Pooja, Janvi, and everybody else who have been asking. Prachi, Amrita, I'm so sorry we could not, and there are many more actually. I'm not able to sort of get all the names, but thank you all for asking those questions. We have unfortunately run out of time and close our session before our panelists quickly disappear. They're all busy professionals with their and we are bang in the middle of a working day. So I'm not going to push my luck on this. But so that you all know, this recording will be made available for all of you. For those of you who have missed it, you can view the recording in its entirety. And for those of you who could not attend or be here, please ask your colleagues or whoever was there to kind of share the link with you. So we'll do that. There is one question that has come from Ayushi, which is somewhat relevant to the conversation we had. So maybe we can have a quick discussion on this. How to do training for blue-collar employees as they don't have access to laptop or computers? What can be the out-of-the-box solution for this? Very, very, very good question, actually. It's a practical question that is faced by most factories and most blue-collar workers. Very quickly, our final question. I promise I will not ask any more questions. Any thoughts, panelists, on how we can deal with this practical problem of training and creating awareness for blue-collar workers?
Sure. Very quickly, I would answer this. Like we heard the person say that these people, the blue-collar employees, do not have laptops, or it could also be possible that they don't have phones. While we can deliver some messaging through phones, and usually these days everybody has phones. But if not, I think the most impactful training or awareness is only done in person. And a topic like PoSH, which is very, very sensitive, and we're talking about something which not everybody wants to talk in open. So I think it's relevant that somebody who's an IC person, or probably somebody who's working towards this initiative in that particular organization, should go down to that specific target audience and talk to them in person, deliver the messaging right there, and to be able to build that trust factor also with what kind of an IC that they have. So sharing all sort of details is going to be very relevant in this messaging, because that's going to be your opportunity to build that bridge between this blue-collar employee and the organization. And that's when you'll be able to build that trust culture that this person, if at all they face this situation, they'll come back to you with a complaint. And not just for the aggrieved, I would suggest it's a messaging for even the other employees per se, the men, for them to be able to also understand what can be perceived as a PoSH or a sexual harassment in any of their actions, if in case they thought it was okay or it was usual their nature to carry out, and that they should know that this is something which is not acceptable.
Absolutely spot on, Bela. I think that is the training and awareness is the key. And I think, the very valid point that today in the era of mobile phones, pushing something down through to the phones is one way to kind of reach at a scale level. And of course, the other always effective way is in-person instructor-led workshops, although not very scalable when you're talking about factories with thousands of people, but something that is always effective. So I think maybe we need to find a combination of technology and sort of the old-fashioned way of conducting training and awareness sessions to deal with this problem. Any last thoughts, Vimal and Rivya, before we close on this particular point?
So I think we can make it more interesting by having a theater or a skit in vernacular language by which the factory workman can easily understand and connect. Let it not be a once-a-year exercise. Let there be constant messaging to build trust.
Building trust through constant messaging, maybe even skits, absolutely.
Yes.
And again, the valid point of vernacular language. I think we all need to appreciate that vernacular language is the one way to reach the masses, particularly in a country like India, where we have literally hundreds of languages and dialects. Okay, fair enough. Rivya, any last thoughts before we close?
Yes, and absolutely. In addition to what Vimal and Bela both said, regional language training and in-person workshop is very important because their questions could also be clarified in that in those trainings, and also with a lot of white collar employees, because they have laptops and everything, they also have access to internet. A lot of posters, also your online medium of talking about sexual harassment sort of comes through. But for blue-collared workers, maybe posters all across the organizations in their own language. That should change every 3-4 months so that they know what is sexual harassment. The policy in their regional language, the list of the internal committee members, their names and details in regional language. So all of that will sort of help the blue-collared workers. So more posters and all also, I think, should.
Yeah, I think posters is something that is often underrated or not really used as a tool to create awareness, but it's actually a fantastic tool. And I've seen some really interesting posters in a very nice, either in a sort of a cartoon format, which drives home the message, or which is very, very powerful and punchy. So I think corporates and factories need to really figure out how to use posters more effectively to spread the message. So wonderful. Thank you all so very much. This has been a fantastic, discussion. And I got to tell you that I'm still getting messages from people who are appreciating the content and the conversation that we had today. Very, very big thank you to Vimal, Bela, Rivya. I'm sort of doing a round of applause here, sitting at my desk. But thank you all so much. You've been wonderful. You've been the information. It's been a very informative session. And I think, it's been very, very well appreciated by all the participants. So big thank you to the three of you. And for all the other participants who are there, follow us on LinkedIn. You will get, just follow us on LinkedIn or even WhatsApp. You'll get more updates with respect to this particular link and other webinars that we'll be hosting. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.